we're meeting the Green Knight at Knebworth, and we're helping the Many Saints of Newark take down a Starling. I'm Van Connor.
And I'm Becks Perfect, and this is Off Screen, your 7-day guide to everything movies.
Boom.
Welcome to Off Screen. Hello, another week. I'm happy to say it's been a relatively sunny week here in the UK, so maybe some of you haven't been sat in the cinema, but don't worry, we've got you covered. That's what we do. So we are kicking off with quite a well-known TV franchise, just a little thing that has spawned into a prequel, kind of, you know, the setting the scene origin story of one of the most famous people on TV, or, you know, R.I.P. James Gandolfini. Of course, we're talking about The Sopranos, and we're talking about The Many Saints of Newark, which is one that you went to go and see, Van, this week.
Yeah, this is a prequel movie, as you say. This comes from Alan Taylor, of all people, who, you know, directed Thor: The Dark World, directed Terminator Genesis. So there's not a real big cinematic pedigree behind him. He kind of got his sort of break in the industry as a director on Game of Thrones, of all things. But even then, he was a sort of workman-like director. He and David Chase, stalwart, you know, figurehead of the Sopranos brand, have now revived this. This is the prequel movie that stars Alessandro Nivola, who I haven't seen in a movie for a few years, actually. I don't remember Alessandro Nivola in anything between now and Jurassic Park 3 in 2001. So, you know, it tells you something. He plays Dickie Moltisanti, who is a character that we heard about in the series, but he had died before the series began. Like, he had died something like 15 years before we first meet Tony Soprano. And he's the father of Chris Moltisanti, of Michael Imperioli's character, you know, who played his nephew Chris in the series. And it's the story of his father, who was sort of the crown prince of the Sopranos world. He was the handsome, charismatic gangster who was gunned down in his prime, as legend tells us, over what we didn't ever seem to quite know, although there was a point in the series where they did like present his son with his dad's killer, I think, towards the end of the series run. Forget how worked offhand. But this is the story of Alessandro Nivola taking on that character. It turns out that his story largely takes place starting from the 1967, the long hot summer, as it's called, and the race riots that spawned out of that fateful time in New Jersey and the 2 or 3 years that followed, and also how these events form the imperative years of the development of the great to be Tony Soprano.
Gotta do something about Dickie Moltisanti. What a blow.
I know you can get anything.
Look at Dickie Moltisanti. He steps up, takes care of his family, takes care of all the bases.
If anybody tells anybody about this,
How you doing on your merit badges?
I want to do all kinds of good things.
It's the wanting. Pain comes from always wanting things. But what do I know? I'm a murderer.
I started watching The Sopranos. I didn't really end up watching the whole thing. I kind of dip in, dip out. I know there's some people who will wax lyrical about this series, saying it's the best thing that ever came to TV. Same kind of audience as what you get with your Breaking Bad audience, you know? If they love it,
there's crossover, really, isn't there?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's going to be a lot of excitement for this. Now, I'm going to ask you first and foremost, as someone who isn't a fully fledged Sopranos nutcase, will I want to go and watch this movie?
Will you want to? I can't tell you. I can tell you what I think you'll make of it. I think you'd come out of this, and if you're sort of at your level of fandom, which is to say none, or you've just never watched The Sopranos, I think you would watch The Many Saints of Newark and think this is a basically just fractionally above average mobster movie that's got one or two mid-tier rising stars, people like Corey Stoll and John Bernthal. They're not name on the poster stars, but they're people who you see in a movie. Oh, cool! It's Corey Stoll. Yeah, I mean, first of all, by the way, that's what you make of it if you're sort of not a fan. If you are a fan like me and you want to see the Sopranos movie, God, you're going to hate this one, because the Sopranos is the series that reinvented television, that, along with Sex and the City, reinvented television. has now gone from being this character drama to being this, we're a Scorsese movie knockoff now. We are the thing that we were mocking the entire time, because The Sopranos was never a Scorsese movie. It's very specifically not a Scorsese movie. The other thing is, this suffers from one of the worst examples of prequelitis I have ever seen outside of the Star Wars franchise. This goes to such ridiculous extremes. This goes to the point of just endless fan service in weird little asides that have no business being there. And I laughed at them because it's amusing to see them acknowledged. But at the same time, interesting bit of irony for you. The Sopranos ended in, I think it was October 2007, which is the TV season, just about a month into the TV season that saw the writer's strike. Remember the 2008 TV writer's strike, well, general writer's strike. It affected movies, it affected TV shows. The whole thing was a mess. And all TV shows at the time, a few of them, made busy work for themselves by doing needless spin-off movies. This feels, ironically, like something from that time. And we are now sort of at the tail end of COVID when we've had a break in content creation. So it's kind of weirdly in keeping. There's a sense of irony to it because The Sopranos had ended and been spared that and has now been brought back from the dead for what is effectively $100 and something million equivalent to Burn Notice, The Fall of Sam Axe, or 24 Redemption, or Battlestar Galactica, The Plan. You know, one of those direct-to-DVD movies that serve no real function other than padding. Needless padding. And that's what this feels like. It's a shame, because Alessandro Nivola's good in it, but beyond that, there's no weight to it, there's no heft, and it feels disposable.
Okay, so just very quickly, there's two things here. How is Vera Farmiga in this? Because there is some chat that she might be possibly on some of the shortlists for awards. Is she wasted in this, or does she sort of sit quite well in it? And James Gandolfini's son, obviously a lot of hype around that. Like, how's that all played out?
I don't quite think that Gandolfini Jr. has the range of his... I know he's not actually Gandolfini Jr., he's Michael Gandolfini, isn't he? But I know, but Gandolfini Jr. doesn't quite have the same sad clown charisma that James Gandolfini always had. James Gandolfini was, and the series acknowledged it out loud and compared him to the sad clown fairly often. He doesn't quite have that. And I don't think that we're talking about as good an understanding of the man your father was as, for instance, Ice Cube and O'Shea Jackson Jr. Definitely not that kind of thing. Or Denzel and John David. It's not that kind of performance, because you know for a fact they could walk in their father's shoes effortlessly again tomorrow. No research needed. And the problem, and this permeates the film throughout, I want to be really quick because we've got to talk about Starling, is there's too much impersonation. Billy Magnuson as Paulie, for instance, it's an impersonation. The guy doing Syl, and that's another thing, like, we didn't need an origin story for Syl's hairpiece. It didn't need to exist. It's all impersonations, and it feels awkward and corny and cheesy and forced, and it takes you out of the realism that was The Sopranos. I think it's a massive waste of potential. Capably made, 3-star film, great performance from Alessandro Nivola, what little of it there is, but it's a muddled film. It doesn't understand what its own focus is, and it doesn't need to exist.
Oh, what a shame. Okay, let's move on to something very different. On Netflix is The Starling, which stars Melissa McCarthy, Chris O'Dowd, and Kelvin Kline, and a Starling.
And a Starling. And Chris O'Dowd. And there's a Santa Clarita Diet reunion in here because we get Timothy Olyphant and Skylar Gisondo. So happy day, justice for the Santa Clarita Diet fans. Go on. So this is very much not a movie in the tone of me delivering that news. So please. No,
absolutely not. So it's Chris O'Dowd and Melissa McCarthy are a couple who suffered a tragedy. They've lost a child, and they are both dealing with it in very different ways. Chris O'Dowd puts himself into an institution to kind of help himself get through that. Meanwhile, his wife is at home trying to just come to terms with everything, and she seeks a bit of solace through a vet played by Chris Kline, initially because she gets knocked out by a Starling.
I thought maybe we could go up to the lake again when you get home, for the 4th.
Sure.
That's fun, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be just like it was, like nothing ever happened.
I didn't say that.
No, I know. No, but that is why I'm here, isn't it? I'm supposed to just go back to being my good old self, and we can all get on with our lives.
It's just gonna take time, that's all.
No, don't. Please. Man, you really think that time is gonna make all of this okay? It's gonna make us okay?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we can't stay here like this. This is not good.
I know. but I don't know how I fit anymore.
You've done the same thing I have, by the way, Bex, which is, I've been doing this all week, which is you've said Calvin Klein and Chris Klein already. And
Kevin Klein, have I?
Kevin, you've said Calvin and Chris so far. I've been doing the same damn thing all week.
Did I? Oh my goodness.
Yep.
Well, Kevin Klein all the way.
Because I miss Kevin Klein so much.
Yes, and sorry, apologies if I said that. It just rolled off the tongue with all the other Kleins.
Can I just say though, I want to see Kevin Klein star in his own Street Fighter origin story spin-off movie, where instead of Chris Klein, because that would have been just awesome. But go on, the Starlings. We've not got long on this, so take it away. We've got a minute. Go on, take it away.
I quite like this film. I thought it was, for me, it's a departure from some of the Melissa McCarthy movies of late, and I quite liked that. It's a softer, sort of more dramatic role for her. There's obviously some comedic elements in it. Lovely performance from Chris O'Dowd, and Kevin Klein is excellent in it. And it's kind of like, it's a soft Sunday afternoon movie, isn't it? It's one that's an easy watch. It's only like an hour and 45 minutes, but it's got a lot of heart to it. I enjoyed it.
It's got dramatic weight as well. Like there's some serious emotion packed into this. This will take you through the ringer. But it is very much a Netflix film. So like you say, Sunday afternoon film as well. I would say comparatively as well, it's a Netflix film. Like this isn't a theatrical. You can't see it theatrically, but you know what I mean? Like you wouldn't watch this on a cinema screen and think of it the same way. But yeah, I was quite moved by it. It was something quite different. The director and Melissa McCarthy worked together on St. Vincent about 5 years ago, I think, with Bill Murray. Bill Murray and the kid, I think. And this has sort of a similar vibe, but it's a bit more somber. So that's the Starling. That's on next. Thumbs up, thumbs down from you, Bex. Go on.
Oh, thumbs up for that one. I think, considering that you're going to get it free for Netflix, it's well worth the watch.
Exactly. You can't ask for your money back.
Welcome back to Offscreen. So we took you all the way across to The Sopranos, back again with The Starling, and now we're taking you back to medieval times. In fact, we're taking you back to the time of the Knights of the Round Table and Dev Patel and Alicia Vikander. We're talking about The Green Knight. It's the story of Sir Gawain?
Gawain? I think he's Gawain. I think he's Gawain. Let's just call him Gawain.
Gawain.
Let's call him Dwayne with a G. So he's Gawain. Let's just call him Gawain.
Okay, he's Gawain. He's played by Dev Patel. He's basically King Arthur's wayward nephew who goes on who goes on a quest to confront the Green Knight, which is a gigantic emerald-skinned stranger and known as the Tester of Men. And this, as you can imagine, is a very, very strange, wonderful, whimsical romp through the world of medieval fantasy.
Here's a clip of a talking fox.
Why do you stop me? I cannot tarry.
Go that way in your doom is at hand. You will find no mercy, no happy end.
What witchcraft is this?
No witchcraft. He you seek is as wild as I, but knows no measure.
I know what I face.
If any man truly knew, he would bear his shame happily and turn away, head held high, to end his song as he saw fit. His secret would be safe with me. Are you this man?
No.
Look, I gotta be honest, both Bex and I have seen the movie and it makes as much sense to us, that clip. So, like we both creased with laughter after the words, here's a clip of a talking fox, because we knew exactly what was coming. This is deranged. I mean, this has been really anticipated because it came out a while ago it was supposed to come out a while ago in the US. They did all the press shows and everything, I think. They were starting to roll it out on a limited basis because it's A24 that were putting it out. And then I think due to COVID, there was a bunch of delays. It got shunted back and it's been really anticipated the whole time. This is also, it's interesting, Dev Patel seems to have this knack for revisionist history, what do they call it, colorblind casting gigs. And he's really good in them. He's always great in like Copperfield, wasn't it? The Armando Iannucci one. Love it. This is bonkers. This plays like Nicolas Cage's Mandy. This feels like a Nicolas Cage movie that happens to star Dev Patel.
And I don't know what I make of it because after that clip, I wouldn't be surprised if Adam Driver and a few others popped out to sing "I Love You" and then "Kill Me Now." Yeah. But it is bonkers. I do love a bit of old fable, ye oldie kind of bonkersness, like Game of Thrones style. It doesn't quite work in the same way as Game of Thrones does. It just takes you in a completely different direction, doesn't it?
But that's it. Speaking, because you've mentioned that with that Game of Thrones, the style of that, right? So the interesting thing I found about this was, first of all, I loved the aesthetic of it early on. It has a very distinctly creepy vibe. The A24 label starts to make sense very early on. And also, it does seem to share things in common with, for instance, The Witch, if you remember that a few years ago.
Yeah, I love
And then you realise who's playing the Green Knight, and it's Ralph Ineson. Who, of course, we saw in everybody talking about Jamie recently as the dad. And then you've got Sean Harris and Kate Dickie as King Arthur and Guinevere. And you start looking at the cast that are assembled around this. You're like, okay, I'm getting the vibe that you're going for and applying, that palette, that aesthetic, that look and that feel to something that's then more fantastical. That is quirky and weird and absolutely a justifiable reason for this movie. Like, go and see this movie purely for that, because it's like nothing else. Like, you have to give it to it. It is quite unique. And you will be talking about, and there are, because so much of it is so abstract and weird and kooky and has that, we're doing a visual story, here's a music video for 15 minutes, but you're not gonna mind because it's weirdly compelling. Go and see it for all this weirdness, because I think you'll talk about it. If you're gonna have that quirky mate who's really into this.
Yeah.
And it's a movie, you know what I mean? Like, you're gonna find yourself at a dinner party. Yeah. Yeah. But you're gonna find yourself at that dinner party with that one person.
Yeah, and then if you've seen it, then you could both have something to talk about. Otherwise, you wouldn't have anything to talk about. It's definitely not for everyone. I think I had a few problems with the fact that it is so dark visually, and I struggled a bit with that. Yeah, it's for me. I mean, if you were to watch this at home, for instance, when it eventually, comes out on the ability to do that, you're going to have to make sure you watch it at night. Otherwise, you're just not going to see anything. It does, and for that reason, it kind of. I think there was another film a few years ago that I had a problem with because of that consistent darkness, and it's just like Solo? I wanted to maybe. I don't know.
For me, it was Solo, a Star Wars story. Every time you can barely see that movie.
But also, the last episode of Game of Thrones, there's so many complaints about how dark that was. So there's comparisons there, and it kind of just really grates on you. But look, I think Dev Patel's great in it. I think Alicia Vikander is very good in this. Everyone that you've mentioned, it's a solid cast. It's just bonkers, and that's the thing. And some people, you'll read the reviews and they'll be very divisive. Some people will be like, this is absolute trash. Some people will be like, this is amazing.
I would describe it by saying it's a movie you should absolutely watch while drunk, but wine drunk specifically, if you know what I mean. Like that. It's that kind of movie. Like watch while it's inebriated, but make sure it's wine drunk rather than anything else.
Yeah.
Go on.
Speaking of wine, well, I'm going to move things on actually, because speaking of wine drunk, I kind of think that of when I went to go and see my very first Oasis concert. And
who drinks wine at an Oasis? Becks? Oh my God! I mean, surely it's a couple of cans of Carling at an Oasis gig. Surely.
I don't know how you go to gigs, but that's how I do it.
I don't know. Every time I go to a gig, it's always Red Stripe these days for some bizarre reason. But yes, of course, we're going to be talking about Oasis Knebworth Oasis: Knebworth 1996, which. Weird thing about this film, this is not the thing I was talking about earlier. I didn't realise this. First of all, it is a documentary rather than a concert movie. Like, I have to be very specific about that. But also, it's directed by Jake Scott, which is a name I hadn't encountered in so long. He's the son of Tony, nephew of Ridley Scott.
Amazing.
And he wrote and directed Plunkett and McLean, one of my very favourite late 90s movies, which was around the time of, it was 98, 99, which means it was being developed around the time of this concert. So it ties in. He has basically assembled the ultimate love letter to that weekend in 1996, in which the band who had produced two of the biggest albums in British music history, and at least one that people still seem to agree is one of the best albums ever recorded, took to the stage of Knebworth to, I think, did it total out at 250,000 people, or was it 125?
Yeah, it was absolutely huge. Yeah,
absolutely huge. And they literally had to be helicoptered in. The queue was a 1/4 mile long.
The build up to it was just immense.
It was just electric.
Life couldn't have got any better. I've got my boyfriend, got a lukewarm, semi-flat plastic beaker full of lager, and I'm singing my heart out.
I don't know why she's got a plastic beaker of lager. It's all about the wine.
It's all about the wine, yeah.
Yeah. That, even just listening to that, I've got like tingles, like going, take me back to that time. Does it transport you back to the 90s?
I've not even got to the best part. So first of all, yes, it absolutely does. And it also manages to be quite an inventive film in its own right. So first of all, what they've done, obviously, they're very aware that if you put a movie about Knebworth out, Oasis, Knebworth, a lot of people do want just the concert movie. They're going to go and they just want to see the concert. So what they've done is they've given you the documentary and they've cleverly edited and structured it in such a way that you get every song and you get 3/4 of that song or 2/3 of that song. You get just the right amount of every performance, and they frame it in such a way that gives you this really wonderful chronicle, this really enrapturing, really all-encompassing, immersive chronicle of just what it was like to be part of that culture, to be part of that crowd. It was the crowd went back 1/4 mile, so it wasn't the queue went back 1/4 mile. And here's interesting, and you learn so much about this, just weird little things that you think, oh my God, like, can you imagine? Even if you're not a fan of Oasis, you will love this movie. It's a really incredibly interesting movie, but things that you just wouldn't learn otherwise. Becks, the tickets for this concert, and it's a concert in a field in 1996 that had this many people turn up. They cost £22.50, right, these tickets. Do you know who the support acts for this? And bear in mind,
oh my God, no.
You sat through an hour and a half to 2 hours. I've seen the track listing. The soundtrack, by the way, is being reissued. It's being released. The soundtrack of the performance of the concert is being released as a soundtrack in November, I think. Believe me, I'm getting that on pre-order. And the support acts before that 20-track Oasis set consisted of, and I think this is the order they went in: The Prodigy, the Bootleg Beatles, the Manic Street Preachers, Ocean Colour Scene, the Charlatans, and I'm sure I'm forgetting someone.
I was going to say,
all that.
You're going to forget.
Yeah.
Are you forgetting the phonics? Were they in there? The Stereophonics, like?
Yeah, no, I don't think the Stereophonics had formed at that point. I think they were up and coming. But yeah, you had all that, and apparently the Prodigy came on first and just owned the show, and everyone was worried that they would own it all too much, that they had stolen it too hard. And then, of course, every band that came on, it turned out, just kept topping. Oh, Chemical Brothers! I forgot the Chemical Brothers. That was who I forgot. Yeah. You've got all of them. Chemical Brothers, Prodigy. Yeah. For £22.50. I tell you, I had this conversation with Maria Duarte and Zara Phelan, who were like, yeah, that was about right for the mid-90s. I'm like, yeah. Do you know what? You oldies didn't know you were born. And do you know what? Everyone should watch this documentary. It's really, really great. It's just a brilliant, enrapturing documentary. I can't recommend it highly enough. It had me going back to Spotify and shuffling the entire Oasis discography. See this. It's brilliant. It's out in cinemas from today. It's getting a digital release in a few weeks' time as well. I can't recommend it highly enough. And the soundtrack's a must-have, I think.
Welcome back to Off Screen. So we're moving from the cinema and bringing you back onto the couch. Yep, we've got our list of all the days of the week covered with all of the top movies for you. Kicking off with a Western. Now, I don't normally like to pick out a Western, but I thought this one did particularly well.
I was about to say, who are you and what have you done with Paul Ross? You Western picker, you.
Yeah, I picked out True Grit, which is on ITV4 at 9 o'clock on Saturday. And this was the debut of Hailee Steinfeld. She plays a 14-year-old. Yeah, she plays a 14-year-old whose father is killed. And so she hires, I don't know if she hires a sheriff. I think it's something similar to she hires a U.S. Marshal, and they're joined by a Texas Ranger to go and search for his killer. So this did really well in award season, and it's obviously got not only Haley Steinfeld, who is the name that you recognise with it, but obviously Matt Damon's in this, as is Jeff Bridges, Josh Brolin's in this. It's a really, really great Western, and I'm not even a big Western fan.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, I haven't seen it in many years, but I really loved it when it came out. I will say as well, I mean, you hit the nail on the head, because you think of True Grit, the very first thing you think of now, I think, is Haley Steinfeld. Second to her, obviously, is Jeff Bridges, but like no one ever gives like Matt Damon any credit for True Grit, and like no one's ever hyping up Damon for it. I think.
Yeah.
But let's talk about one that I think everyone has a favourite character in. I don't think any two people have the same favourite character. On Sunday afternoon, I didn't realise this was so low in the age rating spectrum that you could show this in the middle of the afternoon. But 4:30 Sunday afternoon on Film 4, The Devil Wears Prada, Becks. Of course, take this one away. We've got a clip, obviously, and it is one of the vintage Emily Blunt, Anne Hathaway moments, but by all means, please.
Well, actually, speaking of Emily Blunt, this is the film that put her on the map, which is brilliant. So this is the story of essentially an intern to a very Anna Wintour-esque Meryl Streep called Miranda Priestley, and it's just that journey of what happens when you work at essentially a place like Vogue.
No, she called me in there and she asked me about Pier 59, and there was something about Simone, Frankie, someone else, and she needs skirts from Calvin Klein, and there was something about a pony.
Did she say which skirts?
No.
Did she say what kind?
No,
Colour?
I tried to ask her,
You
but
never ask Miranda anything, right? I will deal with all of this, and you will go to Calvin Klein.
Me?
Oh, I'm sorry, do you have some prior commitment? Some hideous skirt convention you have to go to?
Well, firstly, she's off to Kevin Klein, not Calvin Klein. But also, look, this movie, it's iconic, and nobody has watched this movie more than Emily Blunt's husband, John Krasinski. I think he's watched it like 200 times or something.
Is this not? This is the one. Didn't he fancy her? He fancied her from this movie, didn't he? That's the story. Like, he met her and he's like, I had a crush on you. And a fair play to him. I think this is around the time. No, this was about 2005, 2006, wasn't it? Took a couple of years for this to catch on. It was as her star was rising. She turned down Black Widow in Iron Man 2. What a different universe we could have lived in. But Devil Wears Prada. What
love it.
Celebrated its 15th anniversary, I think, very recently. It's 15 years old now, and has, of course, become one of the modern classics. That, and I think Mean Girls around the same time. That hit around the same time as Mean Girls, but both kind of got cemented very quickly as modern classics. And you can see it for yourself if you haven't had the pleasure, or if you want to have the pleasure all over again, because it's one of those people like to revisit. Sunday afternoon, Film 4 on 4:30. Monday, I've thrown you a wild card. This is my wild card for the week, Bex. You know, every now and again I like to pick out that weird little remake that's actually kind of good.
Yes,
and I think it's underrated.
Such a wild card.
This is Paramount, the Paramount Network, 9 p.m. Monday night. The 2004 remake of Flight of the Phoenix, which starred a young Richard Attenborough. Here is played by Giovanni Ribisi, if you can imagine that. Because that's who I think of. Who do you get for the remake of Jurassic
exactly.
Park? Who's playing John Hammond? Let's get Giovanni Ribisi, sure. It also stars, this is the weirdest cast you've ever heard. This also stars Dennis Quaid, Hugh Laurie, I think, is it Miranda Otto, and Tyrese Gibson. Okay, make of that what you will. I'm not sure if Tim McInerney's not McInerney from Blackadder's not in this as well. But yeah, it's a weird, eclectic little film. Very good though. It is a remake of the classic story, the plane that crashes in the desert, the Mongolian desert. The bandits are coming in they're incoming. They can see them coming off on the horizon to raid them all. They have to rebuild the plane from scratch, actually using parts of the plane. They have to build an entirely new plane in order to escape. It's a fascinating film. The remake is interesting. It's cool. It's got some quite cool set pieces. A great sequence with Angel by Massive Attack, Massive Attack, singular. What the hell is wrong with me? I'm a Britpop guy.
You're too busy thinking of Oasis.
That's what it is, totally that. But really great sequence to Massive Attack's Angel, which is I think, one of the standout sequences of the film. Worth seeing, 9 o'clock, Monday night at Paramount. Tuesday night, 9 o'clock on ITV4, though. You picked this, and I couldn't be more happy that you did. I'm going to just lead into the clip on this one for time reasons.
Fine.
This is so good. So this is part of the Die Hard on a ... trend of the early 90s. This is Die Hard on a US naval carrier, US naval warship. Terrorists take it, and the only man who can stop them is a, in inverted commas or italics, cook, played by Steven Seagal.
The man that did this is a professional. Who is he, and what's he doing running around loose on my battleship, Mr. Krill?
Your battleship? You wouldn't be on this battleship if it wasn't for me. He's a cook, plain and simple.
This is not the work of a cook.
He came on board with the captain. I know his routine, front and back. He's good with cooking knives.
Cooking knives?
He got lucky. In my professional opinion, he is a military reject in command of a galley. Get in!
And as you can probably tell from that clip, it has absolutely everything you want from a 90s action movie that is so bonkers.
Including the birthday cake that every man dreams of being presented with, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. Steven Seagal, like, he for me was the epitome of these kind of movies back in the 90s. The poster is him in his naval uniform with the ship in front of him. It's quite iconic. And yeah, why wouldn't the cook be able to defeat a bunch of terrorists and mercenaries? I mean, sure, why wouldn't that happen?
I forget what the mythology, because they made 2 of these. I forget what the mythology is. I think he's been temporarily demoted for punching out a superior or something, or disobeying orders or something like that. But he's Casey Ryback, the ultimate black ops guy. They're not subtle about it. Like, from minute one, it's very like, why is Steven Seagal this chef? Yeah, because his catchphrase is, "Nobody beats me in the kitchen." But anyway, onto a movie that onto a movie that also has a catchphrase. On Great Movies, 9 p.m. Wednesday night. Once Upon a Time in Mexico, the 3rd installment of the mariachi trilogy that included Desperado. Antonio Banderas is the mariachi. This time he gets involved in a CIA drug war type caper that stars Johnny Depp and features the catchphrase, "Are you a Mexican or a Mexicant?" Yes, this is a movie that happened. It was nice to see the mariachi back. It wasn't a great movie, but it was nice to spend some time with the mariachi again, I think.
I remember when this came out, being a Robert Rodriguez fan, I was like, wow, I've got to see it. You know, loved Desperado, loved El Mariachi. And then, this one kind of fell slightly by the wayside. And I think there was a lot of hype because Johnny Depp was involved in this. But actually,
that was it,
you know, just to complete the trilogy, I think if you haven't visited it in a while, go and watch this movie. But obviously, Desperado is the big one that you want to be watching out of 3.
2 things that really date this movie. First of all, this is the last time that I can remember opening a newspaper, seeing an ad for a movie and it said previews tonight, and then just going to the cinema after work and seeing it. Like, last time I can remember like getting that information from a newspaper. The other thing is, comparatively in 2003, having Johnny Depp join the cast of your 3rd movie for, like, you know, the Mariachi Part 3 was the literal equivalent of like Dwayne Johnson joining Fast 5. Literally a franchise Viagra. Fast 5. That exact equation. That's what Johnny Depp was doing, and so worth checking out. Another one that did play like kind of an all-star thing was Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, which is on BBC4, because what other channel would you put? How perfectly suited is it? You know, 9 p.m. on Thursday. 9 p.m. Thursday, BBC4. Everything about this fits the movie, doesn't it? Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, adaptation of the John le Carre novel. Do you remember the name of the director? I can't remember. Thomas Alfredson?
Yeah, I can't remember. All I remember about this is obviously the film itself, but it picked up some awards generally for this, I think.
BAFTA friendly, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, very BAFTA friendly. And for a sort of spy-based BBC4 kind of movie, it does everything you want it to do, and it's, you know, it got a lot of hype actually for it, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Well, it's because it was Gary Oldman. It was you know, that roster of talent doing this story, because it was regarded as prestige anyway because of the 70s, you know, BBC.
Yeah, exactly.
Worth seeing. Another one that I expected to be prestige, but it wasn't, and this is our Friday night film for the week. is, we don't speak his name very often for somewhat controversial reasons, but yet Bryan Singer helmed this. Once upon a time, this was 2008, 2009. Valkyrie, starring Tom Cruise, Ken Branagh. It's the story of Colonel von Stauffenberg and the plot to assassinate Hitler. This was the plot from within the Nazi Party itself. This was a collective, a secret cabal of high-ranking Nazi officers who weren't necessarily on the side of Hitler. They feared Hitler as much as everyone else, evidently, and they wanted him out the way because they could see which way the war was going. And they had the very, very realistic notion that Hitler was going to get them all killed. So they came up with an idea to take him out, like literally from within, to basically plant an explosive device in Hitler's briefcase and kill him. And the man they chose to do this was a one-eyed colonel, played here by Tom Cruise, and I will explain that in order to do that, they employ one of my favourite gimmicks ever at the beginning of this movie, and I've only ever seen it used in The Hunt for Red October with Sean Connery, in which you begin the movie with the voiceover in the actual language, so in this case in German, and then the voiceover sort of audibly blurs into English, so as to explain why everyone's got a different accent, including Tom Cruise, who has a very distinct accent and a very different one from Kenneth Branagh.
It was meant a confusing respect. It was popularity. The army swore an oath. An oath that won't just die with Hitler. What are you gonna do? How are we gonna deal with Goebbels, Himmler, the SS? They will wipe you out.
Doesn't matter. It only matters that we act now, before we lose the war. Otherwise, this will always be Hitler's Germany. And we have to show the world that not all of us were like him.
That is not enough for me. There has to be a chance of success. Then find a way.
There we go. I always remember this movie as Tom Cruise in the eye patch and his Nazi uniform. That's how I always remember it. So that rounds off a big week in movies, actually. Some great picks for you there. So we're going to bring you right back in just a moment with all of our picks on DVD, Blu-ray and streaming. But for now, stick with us. We'll be back in a sec.
Welcome back for one last ride off screen. So, well, I mean, as is happening more and more often, these days with DVD and Blu-ray, there's nothing out this week, really. So let's move on to streaming then and talk about, again, nothing really new on streaming this next week. I get the impression that everything's being like kept quiet for Bond. Because, next week, Time to Die, finally, next week. I don't think they had much choice but making it Time to Die, and we've got that to look forward to. And so, even there's nothing out really in cinemas, there's nothing really out on streaming either. So, but we have got some older movies that are coming to streaming platforms, and Amazon Prime's got 3 of them. From the last few years, going as far back as 2008, but we're going to start in, I think, 2018 with The Kitchen, which was an adaptation of, I think, a Vertigo comic about 3 women who are effectively 1970s Brooklyn kind of mob wives and mob girlfriends, like low-level street crime, spouses, effectively, whose partners all get, I think, they're locked up, and they decide to go into business for themselves, and they become the local loan sharks. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Elizabeth Moss, and Tiffany Haddish.
Yes.
And you're having that look on your face. Like, do I remember this? Exactly. Do you remember this? Let me give you the clip, and we'll see if it jogs your memory further.
Now might be the time.
For what?
For you.
Our husbands have 24 months left on their sentences.
Sorry, baby.
This is the Irish mob, organized crime.
We're gonna take care of you. You girls are gonna be just fine.
We got no money.
Can't even make the rent with what they gave me last night.
They didn't want me in the family in the first place.
40 years we pay protection and we don't get nothing for it. They have been telling us forever that we are never going to do anything but have babies. A bunch of men that have forgotten what family means.
So we remind them.
You know what? I've definitely seen this film. And I remember enjoying it. Yeah, I remember enjoying it, but I
don't remember anything specific about it. Yeah, exactly. It is exactly one of those, and you're like, that was All right, I guess. It wasn't anything spectacular. It was perfectly fine. Like, Melissa McCarthy, and they're all doing something slightly different. Arguably, the only one playing to type in this one is Elizabeth Moss. And that's getting into a whole other conversation about the roles that Elizabeth Moss picks, which at one point are both empowering and demeaning at the same time. But whole thing. Anyway, you can see that on Amazon Prime from Monday the 27th. The day before, you can also see on Amazon Prime Be Kind Rewind, which I don't know if you remember. If you don't remember this one, this was a bit of a cult fave. Michel Gondry directing and writing, I believe. It starred Jack Black and Mos Def. And they are the video store friends who accidentally magnetize all the videotapes and have to replace them, but of course replace them with their own personally staged reenactments of popular movies, which then gain a cult following all of their own. And basically it's just a sort of fun exercise in what became known as Sweding, of basically doing sort of cardboard cutout reenactments of your favorite movies. Did you see this at the time?
I think I did. Again, I think it was, I know Michel Gondry is kind of that time, which Chris Cunningham, Michel Gondry, few others sort of were making their sort of directorial stance in a way. And I remember following them all quite closely. So I will have watched it for that reason. Has it stuck in my mind? No, unfortunately not. But, even with Jack Black in it, I thought it would have, stood out. He's hard to miss. But the title rings a bell, but not the film.
No, that's fair enough. Well, one that did stick out, but got kind of overlooked at awards season, comes the day after those on Wednesday, the 29th of this month on Amazon Prime. It is Selma, which is coming to streaming on Prime. And this was the one, do you remember? This is the one that year. There's one every year, isn't there? You just go, how in the hell? How in the hell does the Academy exist and this somehow got overlooked? What? Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why. Hashtag Oscars so white.
That was that year. It was that year, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was that year, yeah. So, this is the epitome of that movement of it was so ridiculous that David Oyelowo.
He has a thing on YouTube. You can YouTube it, in which he instructs you to say the colour yellow, and then That's how he tells you to do it phonetically. Because I had to interview him once for a movie called Captive, I think, and I had to look it up in advance. I didn't want to get caught out by accident, because I had that happen to me once with Ralph Ineson, because I said Innocent. He's like, no, it's Ineson. I'm like, oh, okay. And so it's Oyelowo. Oyelowo.
That's fine.
Oyelowo.
But he does such an amazing performance in this. Got absolutely nothing. The controversy was rife, and absolutely rightly so. And you know what? You said you've talked about this movie more than you've seen it. And I think, that's the thing. There is so many talking points with this movie. It's Ava DuVernay, isn't it?
So Ava DuVernay, that was the thing as well, because she was the rising star at that moment, wasn't she?
And she got nothing.
I know. And of course, but that's the thing. If you go back in time, if we could go back in time to, just the year before that, and tell ourselves, next year, the Academy is going to overlook a movie written and directed by Ava DuVernay, starring David Oyelowo as Martin Luther King. They're going to overlook that movie. We'd have told you were out of your mind. And do you know what? If you played this clip for us, we'd have known you were nuts for sure. We'd have been wrong, but we'd have thought it.
As long as I am unable to exercise my constitutional right to vote, I do not have command of my own life. I cannot determine my own destiny, for it is determined for me by people who would rather see me suffer than succeed. Those that have gone before us say, no more, no more. That means protest, that means march, that means disturb the peace, that means jail, that means risk, and that is hard. We will not wait any longer. Give us the vote.
That's right. No more.
We're not asking, we're demanding. Give us the vote.
Man, I loved him in this movie. Do you know what? I am going to rewatch. The only reason I have not rewatched Selma in the sort of, I think it's 5 years now since it's come out. It's because I saw it 2 or 3 times when it came out. Absolutely loved it, and I'm almost afraid that it's not going to live up to it. So, I have that fear. But I'm going to revisit it. I just absolutely adore David Oyelowo's
the performance of his career. It was incredible.
Tim Roth as the governor, as the villain of the piece, as the governor is Tim Roth on fine, slimy villain. Who does slimy villain like Tim Roth? When Tim Roth's got that flop sweat going, you know what I mean?
I always sort of think Tim Roth, Gabriel Byrne. I think the two of them do very slimy villains really, really well.
The ones that you really despise. Yeah, they do that quite well.
Like End of Days, Gabriel Byrne as the devil, and Tim Roth.
Selma. So that's The Kitchen on Prime on Monday. Be Kind Rewind on Prime on Tuesday. Selma on Prime on Wednesday. So, that's three for 3 days. All on Prime next week then. So, straight. Do you know what it is? It's because the listings for next month haven't come out yet because it's an awkward time in the month. And Friday is the 1st of October, so it's just hit in such a way that they've not released next month's listings yet because the Friday the 1st will be Disney Plus release day as well, so I don't know what they've got planned. Did you know, by the way, that Black Widow comes to free streaming on Prime on the 6th, on Wednesday the 6th?
Really?
Something
God,
like that,
you'd be gutted if you paid all the extra money to watch it, wouldn't you?
And Shang-Chi is like November 12th, apparently, something like that. Yeah.
Wowzers. Wow.
Right, anyway, well, that about sums it up for this week off screen, but we've got more to come next week. In the meanwhile, I've been Van Connor.
And I've been Becks Perfect, and we shall return.